This video provides a little tour of some of the small jobs that I've done with my welder over the years. This is my 1990 F-150 half-ton. I live in the Rust Belt and I keep this vehicle oiled, so body rust is not a problem, but there was one little spot that got the better of me, as you can see right here. Originally there was some wall-to-wall carpeting on the floor, and there was one spot that was holding moisture under the carpet, and it caused this rust hole. You're actually looking right through the hole here to the dirt underneath, but the welder made quick work of the repair. After cleaning and removing some of the loose and flaky rust, I welded a patch of new metal in from underneath the floor. The blobs you see around the perimeter of the patch are spot welds, so it's just where I've welded for a second, a little blob, and then wait, and then another little blob, and then wait, and then another little blob. It's a technique that works very well on sheet metal like this. As a final step to this first initial phase, I've just grinded the surface flat. So we've got a good solid repair, but it still doesn't look all that great yet. I don't like auto body filler, so I do all my filling with solder, which is what you see here. Now it looks quite ugly at the moment anyway, but I've cleaned the metal, heated it with a propane torch, and gone over it with some lead-free solder to just more than fill that little depressed area in preparation for the next step, which is grinding and sanding this smooth. So here's the completed repair, all flat and smooth and ready for some primer and paint. There are a few dark spots, as you can see, and those are actually small depressions. Since this is a floor, I didn't bother filling that with any spot putty, but if I was doing this repair on an area of the vehicle where I could see, then I would just apply some of that red colored spot putty, sand it by hand, and you got a really great all metal repair. Ultimately, thanks to that welder. This is a motorcycle backrest that I made back in the early 1980s. It's actually the first time I ever used a MIG welder. I was working in the rides maintenance department at Canada's Wonderland, which is a big theme park up here in Canada, and I had the run of the maintenance shop when my shift was over, so I built this chrome backrest. It's just made out of mild steel, fabricated it in the shop to fit this motorcycle, and then sent it off to be chromed. And so probably one of the fancier projects I've done with welding. I designed and built this bike rack for Canadian Home Workshop magazine. It's one of many projects I've created and published in that magazine over the years. This is made from 3/4 inch steel pipe and 1 1/4 inch steel pipe. It's a great design. It's worked well for many years, and it can hold quite a few bicycles too. Full plans and instructions for building this project, as well as a bunch of others, are part of the course. You'll get to that later. This is the same bike rack while I'm building it in one end of my shop. You can see the wooden gussets there are holding the top and two bottom pieces apart, the right distance, and then there's the uprights that are being welded in place. As I said, full instructions for making this project later on in the course. This is a close-up of the welds in the bike rack. This is actually one of the more challenging situations to create a neat weld where two pipes are meeting each other, but it's entirely possible. You'll learn all about doing this in the course, and this is what a solid and deeply penetrating weld looks like in the finished product. This little part sitting in my vise is for a bread maker we've had. When it came from the factory, there was just a clip that was joining the butterfly type piece to the actual shaft that's sitting in the jaws of the vise. That loosened up and it broke eventually, so I just popped it out, brought it to the shop, put a couple of spots of MIG weld on either side of the shaft where it meets that butterfly piece, and it's worked well for years after that. It's just a perfect repair. Didn't take long to do either. This is an 8-foot wide snow blower that I refurbished. It was just dumped in the bush somewhere. Nothing much was working on it. A lot of parts were seized. The welder came in handy in a couple of situations here. I had to rebuild the whole mechanism whereby the chute could be swiveled hydraulically from one side to the other, and my MIG welder came in handy there for welding lugs onto the outside of the chute so that I could put a cable on it that would grip it and move with the cylinder. More recently, I had a little mishap with the snowblower. I hit a small tree after blowing out a neighbor's laneway, and it caused this sort of corkscrew thing, the thing that moves the snow into the center section to get blown out, caused that to be broken. But about an hour or so with the welder, and it was all fixed up as good as new. This is a metal stair frame that I built with my son for a house he has on our property. It's made out of 2-inch black iron pipe. We have some offset metal platforms here, metal treads. They're covered with cherry wood now in the final installation, but this is what the metal frame looked like after we had it all welded up and we're ready to take it to his place, to Robert's place. Here you can see the frame in the shop, and the cutouts there in that vertical piece, we had that done in a separate shop where they do this sort of work. They used a water blast method to actually follow a design that we made to blast through that 1/4-inch thick steel, and it did a great job. The crispness of this design is really amazing. This is a circulator pump in a hydronic heating system I installed at my place, and there's the custom bracket I made in order to support it. It's at an angle to the joist. It's a little bit of a particular situation, and a little bit of mild steel and some work with the welder, and came up with quite a nice bracket here. This is a gate that I made, also from black iron pipe. It goes along with those stairs I showed you before, and a railing as well, but this has been made entirely from black iron pipe fittings, and then also from a little bit of plate steel and some 3/4-inch thick mild steel rod. This is a close-up of the hinge of the gate. I've since installed a grease fitting in there. Kind of overkill, really, grease fitting on an indoor gate, but it sure does make it swing quietly. It's perfectly silent when we have that grease in place. This bird sculpture is made out of number 9 annealed fence wire. So pretty flexible, fairly thick, and you can cut it in pieces and weld it together for all kinds of shapes if you feel like getting creative. Needle nose vice grips do a great job holding these pieces of wire together. You just don't want to use a pair that you care too much about, because the end, as you can see, does get kind of fouled up with little bits of weld. 2 of my boys are heavily into weight training, and they ended up breaking some regular equipment that they bought, so we strengthened it. You can see the gussets and little extra pieces we've added here and there to make it stronger, and it's just worked absolutely perfectly. There's been no problems. A few years ago, I decided I wanted to install a hand pump, a deep well hand pump, on my household well. We have an electric submersible in this well, but I just wanted a backup for pumping water by hand if necessary. But the well casing was not high enough. The pump would have been too close to the ground. So I bought a chunk of well casing and used the welder to weld it on. And down here you can see the bead, and it extended the height of the casing just right for this well pump installation. As I mentioned before, welders are handy for keeping older vehicles going. This is underneath my truck, and it's the exhaust system. And the regular hanger had pretty well rusted out, so I added a U-shaped chunk. It's actually a U-bolt for exhaust system, U-bolt clamp. But I just welded it on to the existing holder, and just got quite a bit more life out of this exhaust system for very little work. This stainless steel measuring cup is in our kitchen, and the handle broke off, so I did a little bit of quick MIG welding to resecure the handle on. This is the inside view. You can see the penetration in it. If you flip it over, you can see the outside. The weld is not that neat. I've since ground it. It's not sharp or anything. It's a little bit blobby, but it's hard to work with thin material like this. You really only have a second to give it a zap and to make the connection. So it's lasted years like this, and we'll probably get many more years out of it too. I could show you many more projects around my place that I've used my welder for. This is the last one I'm going to show you in this video. It's a fence post pounder. So this is for pounding T-shaped steel fence posts into the soil. It's a 2-inch pipe, and I have welded solid steel shaft into the top part. So you can see the top end has the welding bead on it, And then I've done some plug welds in the side, so boring holes through and just welding right through the hole into the plug to the edge of the pipe.